Color theory is probably one of the very most important parts of creating a design. It's pretty much in the very beginning of the design. When we think about shape and value, it really doesn't make as much of an impression as soon as we add color. So we gravitate to color. Color is more important than value or shape. What happens is, if you're talking about visual weight, you're going to go to color first. Color, anything that's colored on the image, if everything else is grayscale, is going to draw your attention. So what matters here are first impressions. They're pretty much everything. As soon as you've decided on a color, even if you go back and try and change it, people will still remember that earlier color. They might say, oh, I like this better, but it'll take a while to kind of get into that groove. So when we talk about color theory, and the definition of color theory can be really simplified. We have the color wheel, which is interestingly enough, circular. Like, we can look at Munsell and other designers who've looked at how to talk about color. And color's been talked about for over 500 years, by the way. So there's a lot of different theories about how color works. Then you have value, which goes from white. So we have, tint, which is adding white, tone, which is adding gray, and shade, which is adding black. And then we have different color schemes, and we'll be talking about those as well. So each part of the color theory builds on the previous understanding. So each section of color theory fully will help you better understand its importance in the creation of your art and the psychology of color. So the color wheel is the basic theory of color represented in a circle. The basis of all colors are called the primary colors. This is for in inks, right? So these would be subtractive colors. They are red, yellow, and blue. Mix primary colors to create the secondary colors. So primary 1, secondary 2, which are green, orange, and violet. Mix secondary and primary colors, and then you end up with the 6 tertiary colors. So tertiary colors are red-violet, blue-violet, blue-green, yellow-green, red-orange, and yellow-orange. So now that you know how colors are made, you can understand how color combinations on the color wheel model might work. So understanding the principles of color combinations will help you to understand and choose combinations that work well together and set the right mood and create the right amount of contrast within your work. So the next thing we're going to talk about are basic color combinations that are derived from the color wheel. So we talked about this a second ago. A tint is when you take a color such as blue in the example and add white to it. So here we can see, starting with the solid hue, and if so, that would be at 100% of that blue. And as we move through, we start to add white, so it starts to change. Same thing with shades. That would be adding black, and tones would be adding gray. So a shade, of course, is a hue that has black added to it. You can create monochromatic colors, color designs using tints, tones, and shades. So here we have some examples of tints and shades, and there you can see how they change. And these would be, the numbers underneath are most likely from the Pantone matching system. So warm colors. So warm colors create a sense of warmth and heat in an image or a design. When you see warm colors, you think of the sun, heat, fire, and love, passion. Red is the color of blood, which is warm, and orange and yellow go along with summer. Orange also can be kind of exciting. It also can cause caution, so those kinds of things. And summer, yellow as also a color that tends to be more exciting and happy and bright, and of course that warmth. Adding an orange photo filter to an image instantly makes it look warmer and happier, even in a grayscale image. So when you divide the color wheel up, you can divide it by cool and warm colors. So there we can see that the reds go into orange, it would be warm, and then the greens that go into yellows would be warm, and vice versa. When we go into the blues and purples and the darker greens, it is cool. So cool colors carry connotations of cool climates, winter, death, sadness, ice, night, and water. Cool colors can be associated with calmness, tranquility, trust, cleanliness. Purple is associated with royalty because they are supposed to be reserved, but there's other things about that too. So here we see some cool colors on the color wheel. So let's talk a little bit about color meanings. So red is the color of love and passion. Boxes of candy are often in red Valentine's Day type hearts. Some are pink, which is a tint of red. Red is also the color of anger and blood. So really opposite. I think that's so interesting. So red and orange are all found in fire, and yellow are all found in fire. And then red and orange also can mean danger. So stop signs are red, which means get our attention, tell us to be careful, and look before we proceed. So it's interesting when you think about it, why were stop signs created red? Like, who decided that way back when? I don't know. But when we see red like blood, I mean, it automatically gets our attention, right? So there's something there that has to do with some very deep-seated issues around survival. And so it's interesting when we think about how colors are used, especially in different cultures. So red is dominant, and when combined with colors such as black, can create a very masculine look. Red commands attention and can set a serious tone. So here we can see different, uses of red in different areas. This is like on a website. Here we have another website, Take a Trip East of Unusual. So red, believe it or not, actually, as much as we think of it as danger and all of those things, it also there's been studies that red, people want to eat more. So restaurants often use red. You think of the little Italian restaurant with the red and white checkerboard. But, and they've been doing that forever. But there's studies behind it that tell us that red kind of entices or increases our appetite. Here's another website. And love. So orange. Orange represents warmth, but isn't aggressive like red. Orange can portray a fun atmosphere because it is energetic and creates a sense of warmth without associated connotations of danger and blood, as with the color red. So orange can be associated with health, such as vitamin C, which is commonly found in oranges. Now, another area where we see orange is in Hindu religions, like orange is like reaching nirvana. There's the orange robes and so on. So there's like a sense of light with the colors of yellow and orange. Orange is like the sun. Here we see kind of advertising geared towards orange. Very different feel than the red. Yellow. So yellow is often associated with the sun and with warmth. When used with orange, it creates a sense of summer fun. Yellow can be associated with thirst and can be found on the walls of many refreshment shops. So yellow can also be associated with fear, which comes from the old expression of someone being yellow, which is kind of an interesting, there's a lot of history around that. Yeah. So the idea that we would use, like, say, green is another one that we use like that. When someone's green, they can be sick, or they can be green with envy. Yellow meaning like they're afraid, like the cowardly lion, that kind of thing. When combined with black, it can also gain a lot of attention because of the opposites. So the very dark black against the yellow. A good example outside of design would be a taxi. Also caution tape, that's a big one. The combination gets a lot of attention. So here we have an image of a taxi, MetroCard, caution. And a website. Green. Green is the color of money. So in our culture, it's associated with wealth. Not every culture uses green as their color of their money. Many cultures have different colors for their money. but we pretty much stick with green or have some a little bit variations in it, but most of the time it's green. Since most plants are green, it is also associated with growth and health. So, that's kind of an interesting relationship when you think about it, at least in the United States, where we really started out as, people coming here to farm land. And if you think about most colonialism, if you will, but prior to colonialism, you can go all the way back to the Vikings, you can go back to the Danes, and you can go back to, Ireland and all of the different areas in Europe, and people were always looking for land because they wanted to grow food. So it was always, once agriculture took it up, then it was always about fertile land. And so there was always this kind of push for people to be able to have enough land to grow food to survive. So there's and that issue of growth and health kind of go hand in hand. So it's used to show that products are natural and healthy. It also connotes profit and gain, and it's combined with blue-green, further perpetuates health, cleanliness, life, and nature. So here we have some websites. Blue. So depending on the tint or the shade of the blue, it can represent different feelings, thoughts, and emotions. In imagery, dark shades of blue can give you a sense of sadness. An expression that goes along with this is the singing the blues when someone is sad. So that's kind of an interesting term too, that, people say, I have the blues. And I've tried to search that out, like where did that come from? Because I was really interested in that. So I did find that during the medieval period, if you were out on a ship and you lost your captain, so you were sort of rudderless or captainless, like you didn't have direction, you would hang a blue flag. And that's where they said, that people were blue, like it was coming from. So that's where some people think that term started in Old English, that it was blue because you had lost the leader. So light blue is the color of the sky and of water, which can be refreshing, free, and calm. Blue skies are calming and tranquil. Water washes away dirt and it cleans wounds. And it's, we need water to live. So water is extremely important to us. Blue can represent freshness and renewal, such as when it rains and it washes everything away, like all the dirt and the dust. The calmness of blue also promotes relaxation. Many times you see blue, like light blues in bedrooms or bathrooms, that kind of thing. So you want to have a calm area. Purple is often associated with the color of robes of royalty. Purple relates to royalty because the reason why is because way back in ancient times, there was a certain mollusk, and I'm basing it on the name of it, but there was a certain mollusk that actually emitted a type of purple dye, and it's called Tyrian purple, or Tyrian violet, Tyrian, and it took like thousands of mollusks in order to, and mollusk is it's a type of shellfish. It took thousands of them in order to just get a very small amount of this dye. So this dye was highly sought after. So the only people who could afford this dye was royalty. So people who are, and so it's interesting too, because if you go back to the crucifixion and you go back to look at the early images of Christ in the catacombs, they in the early catacomb images of Christ, they portray him as the shepherd, and he's usually in white. But then once he starts to become the king, the Lamb, King of God, they start to portray him in a purple gown, so a purple robe. So that definitely is associated with this Tyrian purple, which was always associated with royalty. There were queens in the early Roman Empire that when they would have a baby, they would have the whole room would be purple, like everything was purple, like the walls, the floors, everything. It's crazy. So purple with more red can be associated with romance, intimacy, softness, and comfort. Purple can give a sense of mystique as well as luxury. And a good example would be the wine, like wine. So a lot of purple there. White can be associated with sterility due to doctors wearing white and most hospitals being white. So the idea is that once they figured out that, the reason you got sick was because you couldn't keep things clean. So there was this idea of sepsis, and they wanted to have antisepsis or antiseptic kind of environment. So if you wore white, you could see what was dirty. Like you could see it immediately. So it was very much about common sense. So most artistic depictions of religious figures are completely colorless. White represents good and holiness. So there's like a lot of white in like the kalos and so on. White can represent cleanliness, such as clean linens, clean laundry. It can represent softness due to cotton and clouds. It reference mental health due to the white coats and uniforms, white walls, etc. White is great for connotating health and cleanliness in the optical kind of website. And one company that's used white quite a bit has been Apple. And so if you go back and look at some of the early Apple ads, they were the very first ones to just have like completely white background and then just their machine right in the middle. So there's this idea of empty space, and that you need to have that empty space to rest. And so having it all white makes you automatically give more importance to the little bit of imagery that's on it. So if there's like a ton of imagery there, then it's sort of equally important. And it's kind of like Finding Waldo. It's too much. But when there's a lot of white space and just one or two things on there, it starts to direct your vision more. Black. So black is sometimes associated with death, especially in the United States. So we wear black to funerals. Also, you'll see people in not all religious orders, but a lot of religious orders that wear black to kind of signify that they're always in mourning for Christ. It can represent decay due to rot based on how food breaks down and turns black. Black can represent evil because it is the opposite of white, which often represents good. So it's that yin and the yang. You see that kind of thing. But black is also elegant and can represent professionalism. It can also represent anxiety due to the darkness of the unknown. A lot of black in an image can suggest depression and despair, as well as loneliness. However, despite all the negative connotations, like I said earlier, when it's combined with things like gold, it all represents luxury. Combined with silver or gray, it can represent sophistication, such as a timepiece or let me go back. Like this timepiece on the website. So very much about, luxury. And so in conclusion, it's essential to understand color as a designer. Everything that you as a designer, need to think about that color is serious, and you have to give it real consideration. You can't just, I like this color. So what I find especially when students are starting out in design, is that they tend to pick colors that they like. And that's okay if they fit the model. But a lot of times what you need to do is not pick colors what you like, but colors that have a psychological emphasis. And I just basically touched the surface here. There's so much more when it comes to the psychology of color. And I know that most of you are, you're in the process now of working on an essay. So I want you to look up things like color in marketing, or, color in website design, or color in design in general, and see what kinds of things you find out about the psychology of color. And you can even look at color in mental health, or, color in health in general, and see if color affects those things. See if there's a way that color can change the way that people feel. Okay. The color choices that you make can create a great effect on the mood of your work, and also the mood of the people who are viewing it. The right combination can gain attention and deliver the right message visually, further driving the message to your viewers' minds. Because remember, at the end of the day, when we're doing work like this, when we're making designs, when we're working with color or shape or value or any of those things in our compositions, we're trying to communicate. We're communicating in a language that is unlike any other. So color is one of the elements of design, and the way that we use it, if we repeat it, if we, the value of the color that we use, all of those things affect the way that it's read, because everything is associated with what's in the real world. And so when we think about how color works, we always have to think about the psychology of it. What is the natural inclination of a person within a culture, because it changes depending on the culture you're in. What do they read into that? What is it? What do they automatically, what's the first thing that they think of when they see a particular color? And so that's important to you. And if you are going to, use color, you want to be considerate of that. So for you to work on this essay now, I think it's a big part of, how do I think about color? And I want you to respond to it too. I want you to be able to say, I was really surprised when I learned this, or I was really surprised when I learned that. I did not know that color was so much part of my life and kind of directed my mood. All right, so that's the end of the lecture on the beginning kind of lecture of color, and we will stop there.